I was the Sinclair family's attack dog. I did 3 years in prison for their heir, Dino Sinclair. I'd also been in love with him for 11 years. Right before I went in, he announced to all his men that he was getting married. To some blue blood heiress everyone adored. I raised a final glass to him. After that, concrete walls and iron bars locked away my freedom and wore down my obsession. Later, I fell for someone in prison and had to beg Dino to save his life. But Dino, his eyes red, just asked me, "How could you let him take my place in your heart? Are you sure you want to take the fall for him?" Old Mr. Sinclair took a sip of tea from across the table and spoke slowly, as if I had a choice. "I'm sure." I spun a pen in my hand, trying to look casual as I crossed my legs, like I was just agreeing to another routine job, another mess of Dino's to clean up. Not like I was about to throw away my freedom and lock myself behind bars for him. 3 years, maybe 7. We'll pull what strings we can. The old man used to be a force to be reckoned with, but he was frail now, much older. Still, his word was bond. But even he could only promise so much. I nodded to show I understood and laid out my terms. Same as before. When I get out, I want my freedom. The Sinclairs don't go back on their word. After this, your life is your own. Mr. Sinclair set his teacup down, his words ringing with finality. Before he stood up, he hesitated for a moment. About Dino, he doesn't need to know, I cut in. The head of the family has enough on his plate. With a wedding coming up, he has even less time to worry about his attack dog, just trying to survive. Even if that dog has been by his side for 11 years. Old Mr. Sinclair said no more and walked out the door. The old man was barely out the door before Dino's call came through. "Alan, where are you?" His impatience crackled through the line. "On my way, boss." I drew out the last word, my tone laced with a familiar, placating weariness. Soothing him had become a habit. I wondered if getting married would mellow him out at all. "If you don't get here soon, they're gonna drink me under the table." I rubbed my temples. I could just picture it. A bunch of guys shoving expensive liquors at Dino, using congratulations as an excuse to stick it to the big boss. Okay. When I arrived, it was just as I'd imagined. Everyone was topping off their glasses, the mood perfectly staged. "Boss, the Courtney family is second only to the Drakes. Marrying their daughter is a hell of a power move. None of the old guard at Sinclair Inc. will dare to cross you now. You make it sound like the boss needs a woman to get ahead. He did this on his own merit." I leaned against the doorframe with my arms crossed, listening to them lay it on thick, until a few of them at the back turned, saw me, and started nudging the others. The chatter died down. Everyone knew Dino found me as a kid. I was his right hand, his manager, and his bed warmer. The title was awkward, but I was the person sleeping next to him, the one who helped him take control of the family. And my feelings for him were an open secret. So there were certain things they knew not to say in front of me. I found it hilarious. Afraid the party would die, I jumped in with some banter. "All right, you guys are getting bold." I swaggered forward, intercepted a glass meant for Dino, and downed it in one go. "You want to get him drunk, you gotta go through me first." Seeing I wasn't bothered, the room came back to life. And just like that, I became the designated punching bag for drinks. Not that it mattered. I'd built up this tolerance for him in the first place. With me standing there, Dino's mood finally improved. He slipped outside to take a call and was gone for a long time. "Alan, man, you're incredible. You handled that North Street business so fast." I waved it off, bending over to soothe my burning stomach. Felt like it was filled with lead, weighing me down. The Sinclairs have clout. A little problem like that is easy to smooth over. I smiled, tightened my grip on the glass, and poured more liquor down my throat. The disco ball overhead spun, its colorful beams dazzling my eyes. Yeah, how hard could it be for the Sinclairs to make an aggravated assault charge disappear? Just find someone to take the fall. The only people there that day were me, Dino, and the Courtney family heiress, Rachel. That bastard Dino, trying to defend Rachel's honor, had smashed a bottle over some VP's head at the Chamber of Commerce. The guy's still laid up in a hospital bed. If I didn't take the blame, was Dino supposed to do time for it? But it didn't matter. I had no one. Once I sold this life of mine, my debt to Dino would be paid. As the party was winding down, Dino came back in with Rachel on his arm, sparking a fresh round of cheers. Through the drunken roar, I watched him from a distance, perfectly sober. I raised my glass to him through the haze that seemed to fill the space between us. Congratulations on the wedding. I dreamed I was 13 again. My parents had died on Sinclair turf in a brawl over gambling debts. It was New Year's Eve. Fireworks lit up the sky, and I saw their dead, unseeing eyes just as the countdown hit 0. Dino was 15 then. He found me on the street and took me in. The Sinclair family was forced to handle my parents' funeral arrangements. From then on, it was like I lived for him. My phone rang and rang, but my head was too heavy to lift. Hangovers are hell. The only person who'd machine gun call me like that was Dino. Still sleeping at this hour? What kind of example does that set for the guys under you? He'd completely forgotten whose fault it was that I was this hungover. I didn't bother explaining. I just waited for my orders. "What's up, boss?" He was quiet for a second, then finally said it. "I need you to pick up Rachel this afternoon. I'm completely swamped. She has a yoga class at a studio in Midtown." The fog in my head vanished after I processed those 2 sentences, replaced by a delayed, dull ache, coming from my heart. "Why me? All those years I slept next to you, and you really trust me this much? After what happened last time, I'm worried someone from the chamber might try to give her trouble. I don't trust anyone else. Only you." I almost laughed out loud. "Yeah, only me. The one who's followed you around like a puppy since we were kids, hanging on your every word. So obedient that you never had to question my loyalty or care about my feelings." I took a deep breath, swallowed the bitterness rising in my throat, and answered flatly, "Fine." Rachel was a true high society lady. Poised, well-mannered, and graceful. She sat quietly in the back seat, only shifting into girlish delight when Dino called. I couldn't help but wonder how a man like Dino, known for his ruthlessness, had ever won her over. That mystery was solved the moment he opened the car door for her. The man who was usually stone-faced and decisive was holding a bouquet of wisteria, his eyes overflowing with tenderness. A complete stranger from the Dino I knew. They really did look perfect together. Suddenly, I understood. You don't need a reason to be loved. Some people are just born to be on a pedestal. Dino knocked on my window. I rolled it down. "Are you pissed?" My chaotic thoughts froze. For a second, I was speechless, wondering what role he thought I had in this. I just shook my head and deliberately tossed the question back at him. "What right do I have to be pissed?" Dino clearly hadn't expected me to turn it back on him and was at a loss for words. The conversation was obviously over. I started the car. "I'm leaving. I had to go." The summons had come through. Today was my last day of freedom. My expression was anything but relaxed, but just before he turned away, I called out to him again. "Boss." He glanced back at me, his eyes light in the fading sun. "Keep more guys around you from now on. You'll always need them." He didn't get it, assuming I was still being sarcastic. His face hardened. "Alan, have I been spoiling you?" I shook my head with a bitter smile and ducked back into the car. Before he could blow up again, I drove off. In the rearview mirror, Dino's figure grew smaller until he was just a dot. I raised my hand and made a finger gun at him, just like in the games we used to play as kids. Bang. "See you never." In the detention center, they buzzed my hair down to the scalp. I looked like some naive kid who didn't know a thing about the world. Thrown into a den of wolves, I was fresh meat. A soaked mattress, a toilet that would never come clean, sleepless nights. It was like my whole life had been wiped clean and started over. I finally earned my place after a life or death fight with 5 other guys, using a toothbrush I'd sharpened to a point. My sentencing day came quickly. 3 years. Way better than I'd expected. On the day of my transfer, a guard called my name at the door. "Alan." I got up and went out without a word. The guard leaned in and whispered, "You have a visitor from your family. Come with me to the visitation room." "Who?" "The young Mr. Sinclair." So, after a few months of not being able to find me, Dino finally figured it out. But pulling strings to see me at a time like this wasn't his style. What was this? A guilty conscience? Was he here to apologize or thank me? I stood with my hands behind my back and refused flatly. I'm not seeing him. Then, under the guard's complicated gaze, I boarded the bus with the other transfers. Northgate Penitentiary. Late at night, I opened my eyes at the sound of rustling. Two guys from the next bunk were huddled together, whispering. A tattooed middle-aged man and a skinny guy. I quietly reached under my pillow for the chopstick I'd hidden there. I'd spent the day sharpening its tip. Vigilance was survival. My body was already coiled, ready to spring. A few minutes later, however, they headed in the other direction, toward the new guy about my age who'd just been transferred in. He was quiet, kept to himself. The prison uniform couldn't hide the cold aura about him. As if none of this had anything to do with him. You'd think he was a rebel who didn't fit in, but he followed the rules to the letter. He was clearly their target for the night. I lay back down without a sound. The muffled sounds of a struggle soon followed. In the dark, I saw the skinny guy smothering the new guy's face with a thick blanket, pulling it tight. The bigger man used his weight to pin his arms and legs. Together, they started beating the man they thought was asleep. Caught off guard and unable to breathe, the man's muffled gasps came from under the blanket. I tossed and turned. After a few failed attempts to break free, he was running out of oxygen, his strength fading. They were trying to make him beg. Their taunting laughter filled the cell. I stopped moving. I closed my eyes, then opened them with resolve. I shot up, clutched my only weapon, and lunged at the skinny guy. I drove the sharp end of the chopstick deep into the space between his shoulder blades. Blood sprayed everywhere. He screamed and fell backward. The second he could breathe again, the new guy seized his chance and shot upright. He grabbed the big man's throat with unerring precision. At the same time, I pulled my weapon free and lunged again, aiming for the man's neck. But this time, the new guy stopped me. A second before my weapon drew blood again, his hand clamped around my wrist. After kicking the bigger man away, he pinned me securely. His grip was like a shackle. Don't kill anyone in here. I saw his eyes. They were perfectly clear, not clouded with sleep at all. He hadn't been asleep. I stopped struggling. What if I just make sure he never talks again? I raised an eyebrow, explaining my logic slowly, not caring if it was the right time. No, too risky. His tone left no room for argument. I clicked my tongue, about to argue, but he loosened his grip. Before I could react, he grabbed me by the scruff of my neck and hauled me over to my bunk, like I was a kitten, away from the center of the fight. Then he turned back. In that brief glimpse, I saw his eyes turn to ice. The other two were scrambling on the floor. He moved like a wolf, swift and silent, closing in to tear his prey apart. His fists were like iron hammering into their flesh. The dull thuds sounded like a slow, heavy drumbeat, until their pleas for mercy echoed through the cell. Don't let there be a next time. He shot them a look, the threat in his voice palpable. The next day, a guard stood in our cell, his face grim. He was holding the sharpened chopstick. Whose is this? The new guy and I stood in the corner. In unison, we said, mine. One of us nonchalant, the other casual. I'll ask again, whose is it? The guard yelled. I told you, it's mine. The new guy stepped forward, shielding me with his body. The look he shot me was a clear warning to back off. A flicker of frustration and helplessness crossed the guard's face. He hesitated, but in the end, he took him away. The guy was in solitary for 3 days and 3 nights. During those 3 days, I learned his name, Caleb. 3 days later, I was sitting in the corner, munching on a dry packet of instant noodles. I heard the click of handcuffs, followed by the clink of metal. I looked up and saw Caleb standing in the doorway. His knuckles were wrapped in gauze, with flecks of blood seeping through. Otherwise, he was completely unchanged, right down to his expression. I scooted over, making room for him in the corner. He came over without a word and sat down next to me. There was still a little of the ramen left. I offered it to him. He didn't take it, Instead, he reached into the pocket of his faded pants. A moment later, he pulled out 2 chocolates and held them out in his open palm. In this stuffy, airless cage, the chocolate wrappers were pristine, a testament to how well he'd kept them. His Adam's apple bobbed. "For you." I stared. He turned his head, his gaze locked on me, and said softly, "They're all for you." His pupils were like the deep sea. I couldn't see the bottom, and for a second, I felt myself falling in. A bond forged in blood is a strong one. Caleb and I became inseparable. Whether it was yard time, meals, or fights for survival, there was always someone next to me. Our unspoken understanding grew like a vine. Truth be told, Caleb was way more capable than me. In here, his fists and his rabid dog intensity were more useful than anything else. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night and see him sitting there, eyes downcast, never fully asleep. He was my guard, my fortress. I'd pull my blanket over him, my body heat wrapping around him. We were like 2 trapped animals, clinging to each other for warmth. During yard time, a guard waved me over. I knew what it was immediately. Dino was here again. This was his 5th visit, more frequent than I ever would have expected. And every time before, the guard had delivered my answer loud and clear. He refuses visitation. Caleb stood beside me, silently kicking at a patch of new grass. I hesitated for a moment, then made a different decision this time. Dino had lost weight in the last few months. A black metal screen and a sheet of plexiglass separated us. My hands cuffed. I picked up the receiver and looked at him. "What do you want?" Just those 4 words, my voice dripping with distance. I saw Dino's eyes turn red. "Why didn't you talk to me about something so important?" Still the same arrogant prick. Even when he knew he'd wronged me, he held his head high. No apologies from him. Dino. It was the first time I'd ever used his name so plainly. He looked at me and I gave him a frank smile. This was the only way to handle it. I grew up under the Sinclair family's protection. This is what I owed you. I was always in your debt, in the family's debt, right? It was the truth. It was also me drawing a line in the sand between us. But the words had barely left my mouth when I felt the anger radiating from the other side of the glass.
"Alan."
He pressed a hand flat against the yellowed plexiglass, his brow furrowed. But he couldn't touch me, and his rage had nowhere to go. "Did you really think I'd let you go after 3 years?" I sat there calmly, a look of weary resignation on my face. He laughed coldly. "No, you were born to be by my side. No one has the right to give you freedom. You're not going anywhere." A flash of anger shot through me, but I stamped it down. I fought not to be drawn into his storm, refusing to pay the price for his emotions anymore. Finally, I dropped my gaze, offered no reply, and hung up the phone. I stood and walked away. Dino started pounding on the glass, his eyes wild with frustration. But that just brought the guards over. As the visitation room door swung shut, I saw him being shoved aside, looking utterly defeated. He'd lost his usual composure, and his eyes held a kind of pain I didn't understand. From that day on, Dino came to visit once a month, right on schedule. I never agreed to see him again. As things in the prison grew quiet and I started seeing familiar faces among the guards, I knew he'd planted people on the inside. On sunny days, Caleb would find a quiet spot to soak up some sun. I was bored out of my mind, and for the first time I asked him, "What are you in for?" Caleb lifted his eyelids. "Financial crimes." True or not, it sounded a lot more high class than my charge. "Does your family not visit?" I studied him, feeling that his reserved, unyielding spirit didn't seem like it came from an ordinary family. After a moment of silence, his eyes met mine. He said earnestly, "My mother's dead." His pupils were dark, like onyx. I didn't press further, but he touched the ends of my hair, unconcerned. "Come on, let's go back." He had a pack of instant noodles he'd swiped from somewhere the day before. I craved them constantly, and he was the one who always managed to get them for me. I smiled, watching his tall figure stretch out in the sunlight. Suddenly, I thought that hiding out in his quiet company forever wouldn't be so bad. Time is a monster with legs. The days I spent being tamed behind high walls crawled by, and before I knew it, most of my sentence was gone. Caleb was getting out 6 months before me. The night before he left was dead silent, too quiet to sleep. He lay beside me, staring up at the ceiling. It was the dampest time of year, and slick trails of moisture ran down the concrete walls. My hand was resting just inches from his. After a long while, a warm palm enveloped my wrist, then my hand, then my fingers. Caleb folded my hand into his. "Alan, wait for me." It was a random sentence, but I knew exactly what he meant. I smiled softly. "Okay." Then came a deep, breathless kiss. I didn't pull away. I let him cross my defenses. For the next 6 months, I read, I wrote, I worked on myself until I felt like I'd been reborn. But on the day of my release, I didn't see Caleb. Instead, Dino was waiting. The moment I stepped out of the prison gates, I saw him and his men lined up at the entrance. 3 years ago, I might have been thrilled by the display. Now, I just wanted to turn around and go back inside. At least it was quiet in there. Hey, I guess I really had been rehabilitated. My face must have betrayed my apathy, because Dino looked displeased. Not happy to see me? Not really. I turned to walk toward the main road. With a single look from Dino, 2 of his men grabbed me. "Dino, what the hell is this? Your grandfather promised me that when I got out." Before I could finish, he grabbed my shoulders, his grip like a vice. The prison diet had left me rail thin, and the pressure was enough to make me break out in a cold sweat. "Alan." Dino ground out my name between his teeth. "I told you a long time ago, your freedom is mine to give. All those years you were inside, did you forget every word I said?" He moved closer. I looked up and saw the almost delusional confidence in his eyes. And the madness. I suddenly remembered when I was little. I'd found a rabbit and brought it to my room to feed it carrots. When Dino found out, he grabbed it by the ears and threw it to the kitchen staff. It appeared on my dinner plate that night. I never understood where his strange possessiveness over me came from. Now, I realized it was just how a master felt about a childhood toy. He might not treasure it anymore, but throwing it away would be a waste. Especially a toy like me, one that knew how to be warm. My theory was confirmed a second later. "Since you were so comfortable in there, and so eager to avoid me, how about I let you see someone you do want to see?" My pupils constricted. Dino was smiling like a demon crawling up from the depths of hell. In the Sinclair family's basement, I found Caleb huddled in a dark corner. His hair was a little longer, a few strands falling over his forehead. They covered a bleeding gash. The moment the basement door opened, Caleb's dark eyes locked onto me. They were the eyes of a hawk, sharp and vigilant. But the second he saw me, all the aggression vanished. I started to step forward, but Dino grabbed my hand. He pulled me back against his chest, pinning my arms. He bit my ear lightly. "Alan, you're being very disobedient. What do you think? Should I kill him?" I knew he would. This was my punishment for not seeing him for 3 years. My punishment for trying to forget him. For the Sinclair family, getting rid of an ex-con was 10 times easier than sending someone to prison to take the fall. I also knew Caleb wasn't afraid to die. But I was. In that moment, I knew he had me by the throat again. My breathing grew ragged. In an instant, I surrendered. Let him go. I thought my voice would be dead flat, but the words came out trembling. The freedom I thought was within my grasp was just a dream after all. Dino didn't move. "Boss, let him go. I'll do whatever you want." I fought to control my panic, trying to sound placating, swallowing my pride. "Please?" Across the room, Caleb was shaking his head slightly. My eyes and nose started to burn. But in the next second, Dino grabbed my jaw and slammed me against the back wall. My head hit the concrete. When my vision cleared, all I could see was Dino looming over me. He wouldn't let me look at Caleb. His eyes were redder than I'd ever seen them. "Is he that important to you? So important that you'd beg me for him?" The henchmen around us all lowered their heads, afraid to even breathe too loudly. But he had lost all reason, his every word an accusation. As if I was the one who had betrayed him. 3 years. "What did he give you?" What did he give you that made you think he's more important than the family, more important than me? I couldn't answer. Our eyes met and mine were clear. I suddenly realized that my feelings for him were truly, completely gone. And wasn't that a kind of freedom, too? My jaw ached like it was about to dislocate. Tears of pain welled in my eyes, and as his grip tightened, they finally fell. My nails dug into my palms as my endurance reached its limit. Just before I snapped, the pain vanished. A low, steady voice reached my ears. A voice that was both stable and ruthless. A voice I knew intimately from 3 years of companionship. Dino Sinclair, I've been putting up with you for a long time. A whistle of air, the hard crack of a fist against bone. I opened my eyes. Dino was on the ground, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. Caleb stood in front of me, the pressure around him suffocating. He clenched his fists, his hands easily becoming lethal weapons. How? I thought he couldn't even stand up. The whispers were filled with a deep-seated fear. It seemed Caleb had already beaten the hell out of all of them before I arrived. Dino spit out a mouthful of bloody saliva. He looked like he wanted to tear the man who'd upstaged him to pieces. Quite the actor, aren't you? He said, his voice venomous. Let's see just how tough you really are. At his word, the Sinclair men moved. They closed in on Caleb, forming a tight circle. Caleb flipped one over his shoulder, knocking down another in the process. He reappeared behind the group in a flash, forcing their formation to break. 3 men attacked from the same angle. He met them head-on, smashing his elbow into one man's back and driving a fist into another's ribs. He dodged fluidly, and the 3 men crashed into each other. Their morale crumbled. More men rushed him, but he struck at their weak points with every blow. None of them got up for a second round. He was the only one left standing, his body like forged iron, muscles bulging. The ferocity in his eyes never wavered. The air was thick with the smell of blood. He lifted the last man into the air, his eyes blazing with killing intent. I could almost see the man's skull cracking as he was thrown. Afraid of what would happen, I called out softly, "Stop." Caleb froze. The man dangling from his collar looked like he was about to piss his pants. My single word was his salvation. "Let go," I repeated. Silence. Caleb tilted his head, and his grip slackened. Then he walked slowly toward me. His eyes were overflowing with devotion. A moment ago, he had been a savage beast on the hunt. I reached up, wanting to touch the cut on his face. Instead, he gently took my hand and pressed a kiss to my palm. In that instant, I knew he wasn't a rabbit. He was a predator, a king of the jungle who would protect me and tear down anyone who stood in his way. He rested his head in the crook of my neck. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "I couldn't be there to pick you up." My heart melted. Suddenly, I didn't want to give in anymore. A few feet away, Dino's disbelief had curdled into pure hatred. Soon, Dino had his men block every exit to the basement. So many faces I'd once fought alongside now looked at me with conflicted eyes. "Come on, Alan. Just apologize to the boss. He's really pissed this time. Why are you protecting this guy? The whole time you were locked up, the boss was miserable out here. We could all see it. He has deep feelings for you. Why else would he call off the wedding?" I didn't hear a word, just stood there, finding the whole thing laughable. The head of the Sinclair family treated love like a game. He'd spent his life on top, used to getting whatever he wanted. What did he know about deep feelings? Caleb stood leaning against the wall, expressionless, as if conserving his energy for the next round. Because of me, he was caught up in a fight that had nothing to do with him. He could very well die here. But I knew that, at this point, there was no turning back for either of us. Fighting side by side again, Caleb and I were perfectly in sync. We had each other's backs. But it was still just the 2 of us against the power of the Sinclair family. We were hopelessly outmatched. This time, we fought with everything we had, but we couldn't break through. I saw Dino, sitting calmly, pull out a small handgun. He aimed it at Caleb and manually cocked it. "See, Alan? You chose wrong." I scrambled forward, trying to get to Caleb before the bullet did. But I was exhausted. Caleb's body stood as straight as a pine tree. Just before the shot rang out, the basement doors were smashed open. More men poured in, a tidal wave of force. I heard an old, stern voice approaching from the entrance. The Sinclairs dare to step on the Drakes? This new family head has some nerve. Time seemed to stop. Light flooded in from the doorway. I saw Caleb's eyebrow twitch almost imperceptibly. The old man had white hair but was full of vigor. Trailing behind him, flustered and stripped of all authority, was old Mr. Sinclair. When he saw who Dino had the gun pointed at, his face went pale. He rushed forward and slapped Dino hard across the face. Caught completely by surprise, Dino stumbled back half a step. The gun clattered to the floor. The Drakes. There was indeed a Drake family in this city, a century-old dynasty. They dwarfed the Sinclairs in power and influence. Before I could process it, the new arrivals had overwhelmingly seized control. The old man turned, gave Caleb a slight bow, and spoke with humility. "Second young master, the first young master sent me to bring you home. This time we hope you will do us the honor." You could have heard a pin drop. The tables had turned in an instant. Old Mr. Sinclair's slap was for show, but the look on Dino's face was priceless. Realizing the gravity of the situation, he dropped his arrogant posture. But the disbelief lingered in his eyes. Old Mr. Sinclair forced a smile. "The young master of the Drake family is known to be reclusive. My son was blind not to recognize him." The old man ignored the pleasantries. He deferred completely to Caleb. But Caleb hadn't taken his eyes off me. The shocking truth about his identity was revealed. I went from stunned to relieved in a heartbeat. But after that initial numbness wore off, I felt like the person who had been by my side for so long was a stranger. Beneath my gratitude, there was a sense of loss. "So, you really weren't from an ordinary family after all. I guess my instincts were right." Caleb seemed to read my confusion and sadness and took 2 steps forward. "Alan," the old man stopped him. "Second young master, the first young master's orders were to bring you home today, no matter what." The message was clear. They weren't leaving without him. Polite but firm. Caleb looked troubled, a brief flash of anxiety in his eyes. Only I could see that he was caught in a difficult position. Not wanting to make it harder for him, I shook my head, telling him not to come any closer. Then I turned and walked out first. Rumor has it the previous head of the Drake family had an illegitimate son living elsewhere. In the last 2 years, as the old man's health failed, the eldest son framed his half-brother and had him sent to prison to secure his own position. But who knew that before he died, the old patriarch would leave the bulk of his assets to that illegitimate son? Suddenly, the eldest son was the one on the back foot. It seems that illegitimate son is your friend. Old Mr. Sinclair sat across from me, explaining the situation in detail. Time flies. The last time we sat here, I was agreeing to take the fall for Dino. His hair was much grayer now. When it came to his only son, he was mostly just tired. I've always spoiled Dino. He's arrogant and selfish. Even I can see how he feels about you. He's the only one who can't. I looked down, my heart heavy with an unspeakable frustration. I heard every word, but I rejected every one. "Don't worry. I won't go back on my promise to you. That bastard son of mine won't control you anymore." I thanked Mr. Sinclair and left the room. I passed the ancestral hall where Dino was kneeling as punishment. I walked inside and took down the prayer tablet I had hung there years ago. It had my name on it, a pledge of loyalty. Dino was kneeling on the hard floor, without even a cushion. As I walked past, he grabbed my wrist. He asked stubbornly, "Alan, how could he take my place in your heart? How?" Most of his pride and aggression were gone, leaving a desolate look on his face. I remembered when we were kids, and he'd gotten in trouble. He'd knelt in this same hall, and I knelt right beside him, all night long. Now, we had almost become mortal enemies. I didn't feel like answering his question. Instead, I asked one of my own. "Why did you call off the wedding?" He clearly hadn't expected that. His eyes scanned my face as he said, "I don't love her." I looked down and laughed, a mocking sound. "You don't love her? But back then, even I thought you were crazy about her. Then who do you love?" Do you love me? He traced the bones in my hand, his nose brushing my skin, a fierce desire burning in his eyes. It was a silent admission. I pulled my hand away, rejecting everything. You don't love me either, Dino. You only love yourself. He froze. I walked out of the hall. A light rain had begun to fall. The road ahead was long. I didn't have to look back. Within a month, the power dynamics of the city's old money families shifted dramatically. The head of the Drake family publicly announced that his half-brother and his deceased mother would be officially added to the family registry. And this second young master, who had never appeared in public, was ruthless, focusing all his attacks on rival families. In his first week, he took over 3 of the Sinclair's territories and seized control of their smuggling operations. Turf wars were common, but anyone could see there was something personal about this. I thought the Drake's second son didn't care about money, that he was above it all. Turns out he's no pushover. That was before. I heard he's willing to work with his brother now to build up some clout for his partner. How much clout does he need? He's hitting the Sinclairs on all fronts. His partner used to be the Sinclair family head's lover. As the rumors swirled outside, the new year was approaching. I sat on a semi-open rooftop, drinking a can of beer. Ever since I found this place in an old building, I'd finally started to find some peace. I was halfway through my beer when someone took it from my hands from behind. Before I could turn, a thick coat was draped over my shoulders. It was still warm from his body heat. Caleb, his face a wooden mask, tossed the beer can into a distant trash bin. I ignored him, not bothering to ask how many of my locks he'd picked this time. I walked back inside. The apartment was warm. The heat was on. I never used it. Before I'd gone upstairs, the room had been as cold as the winter night outside. Now the warmth seeped into my bones. I heard the gurgle of boiling water from the kitchen. Caleb followed me down and went to the kitchen to make a bowl of noodles. The aroma filled the room. He brought it to me along with a glass of milk. It felt like I was back behind those high walls, when it was just the 2 of us against the world. The knot of resentment I'd been carrying for so long finally started to loosen. I'm not drinking that. I pushed the milk away. He stubbornly placed it back in my hand. Your stomach was a mess those 3 years. Didn't you just throw out my beer? His gaze was insistent, and now there was a hint of hurt in it. After a brief standoff, I was the one who gave in. I took a few sips of the warm milk. Then I turned my attention to the noodles, slowly chewing a mouthful. So you were just going to stay silent while I was mad at you? As soon as I said it, I lost my nerve. I had to admit, I really did care that he'd hidden his identity from me for 3 years. The quiet man in front of me was silent for a long moment. Alan, when I was a kid, it was just my mom and me. I had no feelings for my father. Before he left me that inheritance, the Drake family wanted me dead. That day, Uncle Wu came for me because the family was afraid of the power I now held. They had no choice but to negotiate, and it was my only chance to get my mother's name added to the family registry. He explained it all slowly, his past, the Drake family. His voice was even, but I could imagine his childhood, seemingly privileged but treacherous at every step. So, being a Drake doesn't matter that much. He knelt in front of me, his eyes gentle. I am who I am, just me. I lowered my gaze and saw the thick calluses on his fingers. I thought about the rumors swirling outside, all because of me, and my heart softened completely. The doorbell rang at the worst possible moment. Caleb got up to answer it. There was a bouquet of flowers on the doorstep. The delivery person was gone, but they'd left a card tucked among the flowers. I want to spend New Year's with you. Signed E.
I leaned over.
Who's it from? Before I could even see the flowers, Caleb had snatched them up, walked a few steps, and tossed them in the outdoor trash bin. He looked scarier than when he was beating people up. He pulled me back inside and slammed the door with a deafening crash. For nearly a month, this violent puppy had been on his best behavior in my apartment. For the first time, he sat on the sofa with his arms crossed, looking thoroughly annoyed. I kept slurping my noodles. I pretended not to notice. You 2 knew each other for over 10 years? His voice was muffled, like he was forcing the words out. I put on a brave face, pretending to think it over seriously. Longer than that, Dino basically watched me grow up. He went silent. The pressure in the room dropped. I picked up a bottle of vinegar from the table and poured some into my bowl. I think it's a little sour. The man on the couch still didn't speak. I poked at my noodles with my chopsticks. Caleb. He reluctantly looked up from the sofa. The miserable look on his face made me want to laugh. I spoke with great solemnity, though my eyes were smiling. I hate flowers. Not because they're cliché, but because the wrong person sent them. The tension broke. Under my roof, I saw the corner of Caleb's mouth curve into a smile. On New Year's Day, I woke up early. This was my first real holiday since getting out of prison. Caleb texted me saying we'd celebrate together tonight. I cleaned the apartment from top to bottom. By late afternoon, I had all the ingredients ready, just waiting for him to cook. Through the window, I happened to see some kids setting paper lanterns afloat in the nearby pond. The winter night fell early. The amber twilight was a fleeting line, gone in an instant. I took advantage of that brief moment and went down to the edge of the pond. One of the kids handed me a lantern. Before I could write anything on it, my phone rang. I deleted the number long ago, but it was once burned into my memory, impossible to forget. After a few seconds of hesitation, I answered. Hello? The old stone bridge was strung with lanterns, creating a classic, festive scene. A crowd of children cheered as they ran past me.
Allen.
A voice came from the steps of the bridge and from the phone at the same time. The frequency and tone were identical. Holding my phone, I looked up and saw Dino standing not far away. Only a few dozen steps separated us. There's something I need to tell you. He looked serious, but in the dimming light, I couldn't make out his expression clearly. A wave of excitement rose from the crowd. Some kind of celebration was starting without my knowledge. I strained to hear what he was saying. Suddenly, a bright firework shot up right in front of me. Alan, I like you, I want... An unexpected boom echoed across the sky as the firework exploded into a brilliant tapestry of color. I froze. Memories from childhood came rushing back. I wanted to run, but the explosive sound had turned my brain to mush. Just before the second firework went off, I flinched. A pair of hands covered my ears from behind. His palms muffled the sound. His arms built a fortress around me. Inside my fortress, I looked up and saw the shimmering light in Caleb's eyes. It was a reflection of the colors in the sky. He touched his lips to my forehead, gesturing for me to look up. With him blocking the sound, the explosions were half as loud, and I was no longer afraid. I saw the night turn to day as fireworks pushed back the darkness, revealing all their splendor. It was the first time I had watched fireworks since my parents died. My phone had fallen to the ground long ago. After one round of fireworks ended, I heard Caleb say to me, Alan, don't be afraid. From now on, you'll never have to be afraid again. I will give you all the strength you need. Every word was clear. Every word captured my soul. Tears streamed down my face. As I threw myself into his arms, I saw Dino out of the corner of my eye. He looked as desolate as a dead branch caught in the winter wind. But I had no time to worry about anyone else. I only knew that, in the dead of winter, I had finally embraced my eternity. Alan, tonight, can I stay? From now on, you never have to leave. Those who love are greedy, but they are also selfless. In my old apartment, I was captivated by Caleb's obsidian eyes. We whispered to each other, Happy New Year.